Welcome back. We are now in business session number 6. Before we start, just minor changes to the order of the day. Referencing Council has a number of motions to bring forward to us yet this afternoon, and I am going to extend the session until 5:10 p.m. today to allow for coverage of that. At this point, I'm going to ask Jerry Neiman to come online for our Treasurer's Report, and it can be found in Section D of the Board Bulletin of Reports. Jerry.
I'll ask Angela to start sharing the presentation that you'll find. The outline lays out 6 major sections, and I'd like to think that I can accept questions, maybe just quick questions or clarifications at the end of each of these sections. If you have a longer question or perhaps more difficult question for me to answer, perhaps defer that to the end of the presentation, but hopefully I can take small questions or clarifications as we step through the presentation. The Bulletin of Reports talks about also including the audited financial statements, and those are for fiscal years 2018, 2019, and 2020. Those documents were provided in the package to convention delegates. I won't be going through the auditor's reports in my report. The auditor's reports are usually approved annually at the AGM, and I'm sure many of you have heard already that our AGM this year is November 27th. This year, our fiscal year ends on June 30th, and so I generally talk about fiscal years. So fiscal year 2021 ended June 30th of 2021 this past year. And then we'll also be talking about approval for the budget FY 2022. That's the budget we are currently in. It started July 1st, and we'll also be looking for approval of the budget for FY 2023, that's next year's budget. Next slide, please. So the budget itself is shown on slides pages 5 and 6. That's something we used to call the one-page budget, especially when it was printed in portrait mode. When it's printed in landscape mode, it sort of goes across 2 pages. It summarizes the various accounts that we have in our QuickBooks database, and there are hundreds of accounts in QuickBooks that we post expenses and income against. And this budget organizes those accounts according to things that Synod Council has become familiar with, various ministry operations and program initiatives and things like that. So this slide just simply talks about a few of the selected budget line items. First of all, congregational benevolence, and that's benevolence that comes to the Synod specifically. That's not flow through. Like CLWR is flow through, the Synod passes that money through. And just as a matter of interest, the CLWR funds this past year were $76,000 in FY 2022. The flow through for CLWR was $76,000. So we got a slight shortfall in the budget expectations for congregational support this year. It was down about 18,000. So we were looking for 315 and we got 297 about. And so we have reduced our expectations for congregational benevolence in the current fiscal year's budget. As treasurer, I applied for and received the CEWS, the Emergency Wage Subsidy Grant. That was for periods 1 through 5. That application was made in January and payment was received in February of this year. You'll see that on budget line 9. And we asked for and received as planned $420,000 of investment income from LFEC. And that those payments of investment income from LFEC are done annually, once a year in February. Next slide, please. Our budget line items for ELCIC and LTS are described in lines 14 and 15. Those support numbers, as you see there, 25% of congregational support for ELCIC, 20% of congregational support numbers for LTS. Those are against our support expectations. So we calculate our monthly benevolence to ELCIC and LTS at the start of the year, and it doesn't dip below if congregational support is less than expectation. Our funds to ELCIC and LTS don't dip below, nor do they exceed if congregational support exceeds expectations. So we have a planned amount that we're going to give based on our congregational support budget number, and we do that 1/12 of that figure every month throughout the fiscal year. Budget lines 29 talks about salary and wages. It's basically right on. It's relatively predictable. Employee benefits were a little under expectation. I think we overestimated the costs a little bit with the new GSI program, but that only kicked in January. And as you can imagine, I'm sure many congregational budgets are the same way. Their expenses, especially anything related with travel, relatively minor. If there were no flights and no hotel expenses incurred in fiscal 2021. Next slide. I wanted to speak a little bit about the rollover budget line items. I call them that because they operate a little unusual based on the normal fact that a budget line item is usually use it or lose it. If at the end of the year you haven't spent the funds that you expected to spend, the remaining unspent funds don't go, they're just gone. But in these particular cases, these 4 line items, they are meant to support program initiatives that need a constant level of funding. They need both the ability for the Synod to put a little money away in some years, and certainly with the pandemic, we haven't been spending a lot. You could see how much we have not spent in the past years. And so by the end of this past fiscal year, the column on the far right shows how much is in these fund accounts. And these fund accounts will go perhaps to initiatives or to support staffing, which needs a constant level of funding. So that's why we've created these particular budget lines as what I call rollover lines. Next slide. So this is the first half of our so-called one-page budget. And I've talked a little bit about the income lines 2 through 11, and the total income budgeted to be $750,000 and actually $772,000. On budget line 4, as you may be aware, the Synod office is at 80 East 10th Avenue in New Westminster. It's right across the parking lot from Mount Zion. And in the basement of the Synod office, we have the CLWR, who pays us a rent of $575 a month. So that's where line 4 comes from. The SUS line I've already talked about, CWS, applied online. And other special gifts to the Synod are often designated as in-kind, or those kinds of special gifts that people give to the Synod that's different from congregational support. Under expenses, as I've said a moment ago, the ELCIC and LTS are 100% because we do that benevolence per the budget expectations. The highlighted line 17 is, again, because it operates as a rollover fund, it's 100% spent, even though in actual fact, there were no true expenses incurred. So the full $20,000 went into a fund account that's number 3511 in our QuickBooks system. So generally, the program dollars are relatively unspent. you'll see that there's not much going on in the missions committee or the global missions initiative. No expenses there at all. On line 21, that budget line item includes Angela Chorney is our Dots and Crosses contract. She's our convention manager and also has taken over a large number of communication tasks. And it's really the communication tasks that are covered here on this budget line 21. There's some travel, but that was in line 22, but just for, well, some travel and also candidate evaluations that were done on line 22 for theological leadership. And on line 24, that was Cynthia Lobida, who gave us a presentation in April for the Climate Justice Action Group. Line 25, very small amount of funds paid to the worship committee. In line, I'm sorry, that was line 24. Line 25, we engaged the services of Charles Holmes to do some consulting with synod-wide conversations that were held in March. Line 29, expenses, as I said earlier, on track for salary and wages. When we created this budget, line 30 anticipated the possibility of requiring additional staffing support, but that never materialized in the past fiscal year. Employee benefits is our ELCIC group services costs, and that's the new plan that started in January 2021. Payroll costs are, we use a Ceridian payroll processing system for Synod staff payroll. Synod travel was simply mileage and parking, no flights or hotels, and that's past year. And training course 34 was something that Pastor Kathy did with the Healthy Boundaries course early in the fiscal year, just in July of 2020. Next slide. Rent and equipment leases, I just wanted to cover a little bit because in 36, that's the office rent and our monthly costs for the alarm. We used to have a copier, but there's no copier lease anymore. As our copier died, we made a budget of lease versus buy evaluation, and we decided to buy the copier outright. Postage is up a little. Hydro and water in 41 are to the city of New Westminster. Line 43 covers a variety of different costs, not just insurance and our auditing. People also do the T3010 last year, but it's the services of our lawyer and the investigating committee. Line 44, our bookkeeper, Susanna, if you know that name, our bookkeeper is a contractor. And line 45 seems grossly overspent. That's kind of a one-time charge. Recognition Solutions is the anniversary crosses that Bishop Greg spoke about earlier. Lines 49 and 50 sort of carry over. I think next, in a couple of years, I'll get rid of those unused line items. They sort of date back to historical items, but kind of kept them in there, so the line numbering didn't change much from year to year. 53 is convention costs, and those costs include Angela's time as convention coordinator, and a payment to Susan Beaumont, who just spoke to us earlier today. And the study conference on line 54 generally is revenue neutral, where it's self-funded from registration money to offset conference expenses. This year, there was a special meal that the Synod was covering, so that's what those funds are for. Bottom line, a surplus of about 146,000. So that's the end of section 1. Any questions that I could field right now? I can't. You'll have to tell me if there's hands being raised. Or...
Yeah, John Boyd.
Thank you, and thank you for your patience with my question as I'm still gaining my bearings here. On page 6 of the financial statements, I'm noting that under invested tangible capital assets, property held for sale, we've got the proceeds from property sale of $8 million, which I assume is the UBC Campus Center included in that?
Yes. Now, you're speaking about the auditor's report.
Ah, sorry. I just have a sheet here that says financial statements.
Yeah,
It must be the auditor's report.
That's the auditor's report.
Okay.
And that's right. So,
okay. And then that's listed as an unrestricted fund. I'm just curious as to why that's an unrestricted fund, since in 2018, during the rationale for selling, the impetus for selling that property was because we were going to use what we were told was a substantial amount of that funding to ensure campus ministry still took place in the BC Synod across the province. And I note under your report, we have slated $25,000 out of that $8 million for campus ministry initiatives. And of course, due to COVID, we haven't spent any of it.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, since it's been 3 years, if we've had any discussion about the long-term plans for ministry on the campuses and higher education centers in BC, just because that's part of the reason why we made that motion in good faith.
Okay. Well, John, I guess I wouldn't qualify that as a quick question, so I'll defer that to the end. But I will say that the nomenclature that you see in the auditor's report is externally restricted, which is money that's been given to us by somebody, and they've placed conditions on how we should use it. And the unrestricted portion is money that we set our own conditions on. So we've earmarked these dollars according to the motion at the Synod Convention in 2018 for campus ministry. So it's unrestricted in that it isn't externally restricted. We still have our own set of guidelines of how we will use those funds, but I'm just trying to explain the auditor's terminology with respect to how they've named these dollars. Okay, but perhaps we can defer to the end of the presentation how, what has been done or plans. Other people could speak better perhaps to ongoing campus ministry initiatives. All right, let's go to slide 7 then.
Okay, Bishop Greg is going to respond to that now, just because he's here and ready at the podium.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is it clear?
Okay.
Is it ready? Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks for the question, John. Just to say a little bit more from Jerry's comments as well. So when those funds were, if I'm going by memory on how the motion was worded, something like that, they be invested and that a portion of those funds be set aside. So council has discussed that and trying to figure out a process forward. So right now it shows that for the last couple of years, showing the monies this time around $25,000 available for some special initiatives and other things. But that is not a hard and fast number that as we have further conversations, as we come out of COVID, there'll hopefully be more conversations about what are some other initiatives, what can occur, what should we be looking at across the Synod. And so the funds from the investment income can be expanded, explored, and developing some kind of plan moving forward. So it was just to try to identify. We didn't want to lose the intent of that motion, so we wrote that into the budget to make sure it's there, that there's a sense that there's some dollars, and now it's to try to move that into action and to explore if there's even more funding that we want to have available for that, we can do it at that point as well. So it's to be making sure it's set there so we see it, and then we'll move forward with the plans, with the actions and the decisions. Thanks.
All right, back to slide 7. Section 2, a summary of our funds. So ELFEC, the Evangelical Lutheran Foundation of Eastern Canada, they're a convention sponsor this weekend. We have 3 accounts with them. There's an error on that slide because the North Burnaby, or the Faith Lutheran in North Burnaby was sold in December of 2018. The sale price was approximately $4 million, of which $3 million from that sale was invested with ELFEC at that time in December 2018. The Theological Education Fund started in April 2019 with a grant of $180,000, and the UEL Property Fund started at the time of the sale of the Lutheran Campus Center, July 2019, with a portion of those funds. That portion was $6 million. Yeah. So in Van City is in New Westminster branch is our main operating account, our checking account. We have a savings account with a minimum balance of $44,000. We have 10 times 100K in GICs for a total of $1 million with various renewal rates. And those GICs provide us with cash on hand. If something we were to need cash at some sort of point in time, those GICs would be a mechanism to draw upon some cash. And of course, we do find that we're writing checks to people in the US. So we opened a US checking account in March of this year. Next slide. So total assets with ELFEC, just over $13 million. Our investments, and everything goes by a calendar year for ELFEC. So our investments in calendar year 2020 were just a little less than 11,000, so 11%, 10.7% after management fees. So with Van City, we have this million in GICs and money in the checking account, savings account, etc. So about 1.5 million with Van City, for total assets of 14.6 million. And our net change in the last 12 months, approximately 1.4 million. That's the end of section 2. Any questions on funds summary?
Palmer.
Hi, yes, Jerry, thanks. I'm just wondering, is there not a balance sheet I noticed in the complete reports file that was sent, there doesn't appear to be a balance sheet. Is that just with the auditor's report?
Yes, I haven't created a balance sheet. I've just done the profit and loss or financial statement. It's the balance sheet that you'll find is these various funds that are listed in the auditor's report. Next slide. So the program, the gift of $10,000 for COVID relief fund, has been operating since April of 2020. And those numbers we're taking those statistics here that you see. That's from the end of August. The numbers have changed slightly in the last month or so. So the new statistics are a total of 35 congregations have received the gift. Continue to have 2 congregations who've said no thank you. So 8 at a later date, and only 2 congregations have now listed as no response. So that's a total of 47 congregations in the Synod. For the 2 congregations that have said no thank you, we've placed that 20,000 leftover into council has agreed to make that money available by special request, and as of August, 3,000 had been granted as that from that special request leftover fund. Next slide. In December of last year, council voted to make a donation to the LWF. In fact, you heard on Friday morning the National Bishop talk about the BC Synod's gift to the LWF at $30,000. Fund was the money was taken from a fund set up for this purpose. Next slide. So I want to review the budget for our current year, fiscal 2022, which started in July, so we're already into it for a couple of months. It's only a couple of small differences that I've tried to highlight with respect to the congregational support. I was mentioned a moment ago that we have reduced our expectations from 315,000 to 300,000. And to offset that decrease, we plan to withdraw 430,000 worth of interest in investment income from GICs and LFEC. That's 10,000 more than what was done in the last year. There are small expenses, an increase in the cost of living, 2% increase that covers both years of service increment and cost of living. Housing allowance has been increased to align with a proposal that a United Church concept that provides guidelines for rostered leaders' housing allowances that relate to the cost of living in a geographical area. So we aligned ourselves with those recommendations that we had discussed. And the bottom line, I guess, is essentially a balanced budget, a small surplus of $540,000 to $540. So here's the budget on slide 12. The column with the green or blue at the top is the column of interest. It's for FY 2022, and a couple of lines have been highlighted as being significant changes from the previous budget. And next slide. And so in the latter portion of the budget, it's basically same as fairly conservative budget in a sense. Any questions on the current fiscal year's budget, FY 2022? Next slide. And again, mostly a status quo budget, looking at FY 2023 when compared to the budget that we just spoke of a moment ago. No changes to congregational benevolence expectations, a small increase in the amount of interest and investment income that we plan to withdraw, and again, in a 2% cost of living and years of service increment on salaries and wages. Again, the bottom line is generally a balanced budget. And if we go to the next slide, Again, we're talking about the blue highlighted column, fiscal year 2023, and a couple of shaded lines that show in differences between fiscal 2022 and fiscal 2023. And next slide. And actually that line is highlighted because it captures the fact that we no longer have lease payments for the Synod photocopier. And that's why that number's been reduced. Questions on the FY 2023 budget?
Yes, Susie Byers. Oops. And you're muted, Susie. Susie, you're muted.
Okay. Thank
There you
you, Jerry. I can't find my mute button. Thank you for the wonderful budget that you've presented. I am just curious with regards to the Bishop's discretionary fund on line number 35, if perhaps it would be prudent to increase that to $8,500, which seems to be a little bit more realistic. I know that throws the balance out of the budget, but as I say, I was just a thought when I went through the budget with you earlier and looking at the budget now.
Yeah, those are very hard to plan.
Okay.
This past year, we did have circumstances that caused us to overspend on that budget line item. But, you know, historically, the 5,000 figure, I wouldn't vote against the motion if you wanted to make such a motion. But, you know, all I can say is that we looked at it and we thought, you know, it's really, really difficult to anticipate special needs that may come along out of the blue. So we didn't try. But I mean, if you felt that it would be prudent to increase that to 8,500, I wouldn't disagree at all.
Okay. Can I make that motion?
You can,
Stephen?
Susie.
Okay. Sure.
But first we need to have the motions on the floor to accept the budgets and
Okay.
or to bring the forward. We haven't got to that point yet. When we do, then you can make an amendment to that. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Jerry? Then I'm going to suggest that we bring forward the budget and put the motion on the floor. The motion will be moved and seconded by Synod Council as recommendations. And there is it's actually moved and seconded in that case, that the BC Synod Convention adopt the fiscal 22 budget as presented. Fiscal 22 started July 1st of this year, so we are already in this year, but because of COVID and the dates for our convention, we started the year without the budget being approved by convention. Our bylaws do allow this in extraordinary circumstances, recognizing that we would be meeting shortly. So it's moved in second. Does anybody wish to speak to the motion?
Patricia?
Oh, sorry, Patricia.
Forgive me for not quite understanding. If Susan wants to make an amendment, should we not be, because the motion says to adopt the budget, but if we're going to amend it, should we not be having the motion with the amendment first?
The motion has to be put on the floor, and then she can bring forward an amendment.
Oh, so you're just asking for a mover and a seconder right now?
No, it's been moved and seconded. Now would be the time if somebody wished to make an amendment to the motion, would be the time for them to bring it forward.
Okay, thanks.
The proposal that I heard was for the FY 2023 though. not for FY 2022.
Yeah. Susie,
If I could make the motion to amend line number 35, the bishop's discretionary fund, to be increased from $5,000 to $8,500.
And that, you're speaking of that for the 2022 budget.
Yes.
Oh, I see. Okay. A moment ago, I thought you were speaking of 2023, or perhaps you also meant that budget as well.
I actually meant, I think moving forward, it's going to be, given the circumstances and the time that we're in, I think that's probably going to be a more realistic number than $5,000.
Okay, so, all right, we'll do that one at a time, but
Okay.
first initially 2022 then.
okay. So we're talking for 2022. Is there a seconder to that amendment? Seconded, thank you. And could you, Susie, repeat what line number that is again, just so we've got it in the
So
minute?
in
35.
the financials, it is on page 5, line number 35, which is the bishop's discretionary fund.
Thank you. And we're increasing it to 8,500. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Is there any discussion to the amendment?
Well,
Yes, Jerry.
well, I might ask Susie if you felt that we should draw a little more investment income to balance the budget, or is that just optics at that point?
We could offset the investment income to balance the budget.
Okay,
That could be put into that motion if the mover of that amendment wishes to.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, thank
That
you.
to offset the increase by increasing the amount that's taken from the investment, the income from the investment.
okay. I don't have my calculator on me right now, but we can figure that out.
Yeah, we can make that work. Okay. Okay. Anybody further any further discussion to the amendment? Okay. Okay. So there it is before you. Are you ready to put up the screen? Are you ready? That's going to be voted on. Are you ready to put it up through voting? So I'm going to ask for that to be put up so that we can vote upon. Oh, hands, pardon me. Leslie Ross?
Currently, the budget isn't a balanced budget. So the motion indicates that to do something so that it is a balanced budget, or the amendment has it that worded that way. So I'm just asking about that.
Right. So what we will do is then we will adjust the amount we take of investment income, and it'll be a zero balance budget. So it'll offset and become a balanced budget as opposed to there was a slight surplus showing. Okay, a second. And are we ready to vote on that amendment? I call for the vote. Not there yet.
I guess I could say, Leslie, that it isn't balanced right down to the zero at this point in time. I generally think about drawing investment income from LFEC and in multiples of $1,000, but I mean, we could fine tune that number to make the bottom line to be zero.
It was just the way the amendment was worded that because it indicates that. So
Yeah,
it was just clarification.
sure.
It's not coming up for me. Okay, just hold on, cancel. Oh, there it goes. Okay, it is there now. It's called amendment. And if you would vote now. And we'll give you 30 more seconds to cast your vote. And I declare voting to be closed. Okay, raised hand. Marlis.
I'm just going to speak as your landlord that it's not the correct amount for the rental.
Oops.
Otherwise, I'm Marlis Moen, roster delegate in Mount Zion, New Westminster, on the unceded and traditional lands of the Kikite First Nation and other coastal Salish nations.
Did you raise the rent again on this, Marlis?
Yes, we actually, we didn't in 2021, but we will for 2022, I think is
Okay.
how it worked. There's a year we did not raise rent.
Right, and we thank you.
But I'm not sure where the 1590 is coming from because I look back and that's not even in 2020.
Okay.
So the signed agreement I have for 2021 shows a rent of $16.38 a month.
Okay. 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 We'll leave that to our treasurer to figure out because we're not going to be able to get an answer to that tonight. We do have the results of the election. I'm going to ask them to be shown now, or the results of the motion. Would you please show them now? Okay. So we need to show the screen, Mitch. Okay. Stop sharing. Yeah. Okay. We're locked out?
I'm sharing my screen.
Okay, I'll give you the results are 68 yes, 5 no, 3 abstained. The motion to amend the budget is carried. So we now have to deal with, is there any other discussion regarding the budget for fiscal 22, which is now an amended budget? If not, I'm going to call for the vote. And let's just see for the vote. So approval of 2022 Synod budget and the adopt as amended, and you can vote now. It's a problem with our setup. And we'll give you 30 more seconds to complete this vote. We've got a few votes yet to come in, so I'm just going to hold it open for a few more seconds. I'm going to declare voting closed. And Karen Lee has her hand up.
Hi, I just wanted to point out that the narrative in the 2021 budget does show the correct rent amount for line 30. Just in case you're worrying about it, because that rent amount is under $20,000. So it looks adequate.
Thank you. Okay. And we're back. We had a little pause there, a technical glitch, but we are back with you. So now we're going to move on to the budget for the fiscal. We're going to move on to the motion for the fiscal 22. Pardon, sorry. Pardon. Okay, sorry. We haven't got the results. Oh, sorry, we're waiting for the results still. Okay, are we ready? Please show the results. Okay, so the amended fiscal 22 budget, 69 yes, 1 no, 1 abstention. The motion is carried. We'll now deal with the fiscal 23 budget, which starts July 1st of 22 and runs to June 30th of 23. And if there's a motion we can put up. So move that the BC Synod in Convention adopt the fiscal 23 budget as presented. Now, anyone speaking to this motion, if you wanted to amend, oh, Susie.
So I would like to amend the budget to increase the bishop's discretionary fund to $8,500.
Okay, thank you. That's moved, and I need a second. Thank you, seconded. Any discussion? If not, I am going to call for a question. We just need a second to get that amended motion into the system here so we can vote on it. Myrna. And you're muted.
Sorry about that.
Yep.
There
we
we
can
go.
hear you.
Do you not need to add where that money is going to come from as you did in the last vote?
It's going to be the same vote, yeah. Once we get up on the screen, it'll be the same type of a motion. So let's get it up to the screen and then we can discuss, but we should cover that same factor.
Okay, because that wasn't mentioned in the motion.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so there was what the motion would appear to be. Moved and seconded that the BC Synod Convention amend the line 35 to $8,500 in the amount taken from investment income to be increased to balance the budget. And we will get it up on the screen so we can vote here. Just give us a moment. Okay. And we should get that up and we will be able to vote. Just takes our people at the other end a moment to put it in the system. And the ballot is there. Would you vote now? And I'll give you 15 more seconds. And I will declare voting is now closed. And could we have the results displayed, please? So to amend the fiscal 2023 budget, yes 71, no 4, abstain 0. The motion is carried. So now we're going to vote on the budget as it has been amended. So moved, seconded that the BC Synod and Convention adopt the fiscal 2023 budget as amended. Is there any discussion? If there is no discussion, I'm going to call for the vote. And you can vote now. Thirty seconds, please. And I'm going to declare voting closed. Okay, and would you please show the results? "73 yes, 0 for no." The motion carries. Thank you. Anything else for us, Jerry?
No, thank you.
No. Okay. Okay. Thank you for your work and keeping us on the right path as far as our finances. I know there's a lot of work involved with being treasurer.
We'll get that full amount tomorrow.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we're going to move. Oh, I see a hand raised. Oh, that's applauding? No, there's a hand. Okay, that is applauding. Okay, there's hands raised. The screen is so far from my eyes, and my eyes are so dim at this point in the convention, I can't distinguish between a happy clapping hand and a raised hand, so my apologies. We're going to move to the report on the committee on the report of the bishop's report. And I'm going to call on Dorothy Reed, if she could come forward, please.
Thank you. I'm Dorothy Reed from Peace Lutheran in Abbotsford on the traditional lands of the Sumas and Matsquid people. This report was prepared by Elizabeth Scott, Shepherd of the Valley in Comox, Reverend Brian Crucial, Faith in Kelowna, and Reverend Diana at St. Paul's, Prince Rupert. We're not making any motions based on this report, but have made several recommendations for Synod staff and council. We'd like to start by acknowledging the significant contribution Bishop Gregg has made over the past 15 years. In his report, he states that he has tried to offer wise counsel, a listening ear, advice and guidance for moving forward. I've tried to be faithful, future-oriented, and hopeful to help us move beyond some of the things that cause us to be closed in, unsure of ourselves, or perhaps afraid to try new things. I think we can all agree that he's been very successful at these goals, and we are stronger as a synod from his actions. The assistant to the bishop, Pastor Kathy, summed it up very well in her report by saying his wisdom, humor, and kindness are a gift, and his trust has made this work a shared calling. He created room for us to explore and move beyond something new, towards something new, even in this liminal time. Thank you, Bishop Gregg, and we wish you all the best in your retirement. As you read through the bishops, the assistant to the bishops, and the dean's reports, the recurrent theme is communication, collaboration, and connections. Bishop Gregg's report outlines the process of synod-wide conversations, which provided the opportunity to explore the liminal space we find ourselves in. The COVID-19 pandemic has strengthened our understanding of the importance of doing things in new ways. The report outlines the multitude of new ways that the synod and churches have found to communicate, collaborate, and connect. A full report on the synod-wide discussions can be found following the report from the assistant to the bishop. We'd like to discuss each of these themes separately. Let's start with collaboration. An example the bishops and the assistant to the bishops discuss in their reports is the collaboration of pastors to provide services through the Holy Week and the summer sermon series. They've also been a multitude of examples provided in virtual meetings of collaborative Bible studies, book clubs, other forms of spiritual development. We believe it is important for the health of the synod and the churches that this kind of collaboration not only continue, but be expanded. Another example of collaboration in Reverend Kathy Martin's report is the Faith Formation for Children, which was a Zoom gathering with participants and panel presenters from BC and other synods. People shared incredibly creative ideas of things that they had put together for families and children. Those participating freely and generously shared their resources and ideas with one another. What an excellent example of collaboration that needs to continue post-pandemic. Online connections such as Bible studies, book studies, online ministries have opened the door to reach those not only not within our geographical areas, but those that could not attend in person. The report from the Dean of the Southern Interior region gives some great examples of region-wide collaboration. There are individuals within the Synod who have developed a variety of technical skills necessary to pivot to the online worship and study, and not all congregations have this expertise and are struggling to master these skills. So we recommend that this be shared through a central resource and that the Synod consider developing a technology grant to assist congregations to obtain the necessary equipment for hybrid worship and study. Collaboration doesn't occur without effective communication, however. The Bishop's Office and the Synod Council have provided excellent leadership in virtual communication over the last 20 months. From the morning brews, the special brews, leisurely brews, to the lay leaders gathering, clergy and lay leaders from across the province have had the opportunity to share ideas and resources to help us not only weather the pandemic, but creatively develop new strategies to reach beyond our church doors. Clergy have also had the opportunity to connect, share, and address issues that may be affecting their mental health. And it's important for us to recognize the significant impact the pandemic has had on our rostered staff and encourage the Synod to provide opportunities for sharing, growth, and support for our pastors. We recommend that the communication strategies designed to connect the clergy and lay leaders continue post-pandemic. Connections are fundamentally important in the work that we do and the work that we want to do. There have been great strides in developing connections within the Synod, but we need connections to the community as well. As you can see in Pastor Gregg and Assistant to the Bishop Kathy's report, there have been connections that have been forged with experts in the community to help us on our journey. The connection and the conversations with Dr. Susan Beaumont, for example, today about living in this liminal space challenges us to be comfortable with the changes that are occurring and recognize that we can learn from the past, but can't be locked in as we move beyond the personal to see what God is up to within our collective whole. Part of this discernment, we believe, will be examining the role of lay leadership in our synod and exploring the role of lay leaders in the future. Traditionally, we have been a pastor-centered organization. The future of the church may need to depend even more on lay leaders taking active roles in the issues facing our church today. And the synod can be instrumental in developing the skill set needed by lay leaders to support the spiritual journey of our congregants and to take action on these pressing issues. We recommend that we continue to grow and develop our lay leaders through lay leader meetings and other virtual opportunities to communicate, collaborate, and connect. Bishop's report outlines some of the pressing issues facing us today, such as climate justice, reconciliation, and sexism within the church. These are important issues, and we're pleased that the discussions are occurring. However, it's important to move beyond discussion into action. The Synod plays a key role not only in continuing these discussions, but connecting with the community to work together towards action in these very important areas. And that leads us back to communication and collaboration. In order to move from discussion to action, we need to strengthen our connections between the church and the community. We recommend that a communications team or task force be developed to explore options to enhance communication within and beyond the church. There was one final issue that we'd like to address. Bishop Greg discussed some of the complexities and immigration issues that he and some of the other synodical bishops were struggling with. He mentioned that the Synod is contracted with a lawyer to serve as legal counsel for pastors seeking permanent residency status. This is an important resource. However, the charges for legal services beyond that may be cost prohibitive for most. So we recommend the following steps be taken: that there be a central resource developed where pastors can gain information and share their experience in dealing with immigration issues, that the Synod explore collaborating with the Anglican Church in the development of this central resource, and that the Synod consider setting aside funds to assist pastors who are seeking permanent residency. In closing, we would again like to acknowledge the tremendous work done by Bishop Greg Moore, the assistant to the Bishop Kathy Martin, and the regional deans in communicating, collaborating, and connecting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. A copy of that report has been circulated via email to all of the delegates. Just probably it's going out now if it hasn't been received already. The report included a number of recommendations but no motions, and I want to assure the Assembly that those recommendations will be brought forward to the Synod Council at their next meeting and will be reviewed. This would be an appropriate time if there are any questions for the committee of the report or any questions for Bishop Greg specifically on his report. Are there any questions? Brenda.
Hi, Brenda Nesgard-Paul, pastor, Trinity Anglican Lutheran in Port Alberni on the unceded territory of the Hupachisitan Sishat. In the interest of collaboration and connection and the 20-plus anniversary of the Waterloo Full Communion Agreement, I have a question for Bishop Greg. If you would please communicate with us the state of full communion work and ministry in our synod today and the priority that you see it having in the future.
Bishop Greg.
Could you just repeat that one more time, just the question?
Yeah, sure. Just within the context of the 20-plus anniversary of the Waterloo Full Communion Agreement, would you share with us the state of full communion work and ministry in our synod today and the priority that you see it having in the future? I mean, just to say, I mean, I'm really aware of the work that I do.
Yeah.
But I'm not aware of the work that goes on across the synod, and I'm very curious as to what you see full communion has as a future in our synod moving forward.
Yeah. Interesting question. Good question, Pastor Brenda. Thank you for that. In my time as bishop, I have seen tremendous growth in our relationship. And you're right, it sometimes doesn't get the communication pieces and all of that. But the collaborative work that we as bishops engage in is a sea change from when I started as bishop. Very good working relationship with the Anglican bishops in the province of BC, and I celebrate that. We've been able to move beyond some significant barriers from years ago, and that collaborative work continues. We talk pretty regularly about the needs that each of us have, particularly about pastors or priests, the needs of the congregations looking ahead. Nationally, we of course have the Joint Anglican Lutheran Commission. Bishop Larry Kokendorfer is the representative for the national church on that, as one of the leads on that. And so they continue to look at the documents from 20 years ago, what the next steps would be, moving into lay leadership pieces, where are the collaborative pieces. We've also identified a number of spots where there are some differing either histories or ways of handling certain things, how to approach that, and we've discovered a number of pinch points at the House of Bishops and the Conference of Bishops joint gatherings where that will require some good hard work moving forward. How does that affect the local congregation? Well, in terms of a question about confirmation and how that happens, your congregation is one that's come up with a very creative way in which that might happen. That will inform the national conversation as well with the bishops. So what I also see is more as congregations are struggling financially with size, capacity issues, I've been having many more conversations with congregations, and one of the first questions asked is, how might that work in terms of our Anglican neighbors? So it's a very lively conversation in many of our call processes, for instance. So a lot of development of this over these years. We're finding pinch points, but we're trying to figure out how to move forward with that. And stories from places like Trinity, Anglican Lutheran, and Port Alberni also help guide the way for us.
Thank you. And thank you very much for your support.
Bishop Susan.
Thank you. Brenda's question and Bishop Gregg's response gave me the idea to share with you that it is the 20th year of our Waterloo Declaration. We're past the official 1-year mark, but we're using this whole year up until Assembly next year, which we're holding with the Anglican Church of Canada, to commemorate this important 20th anniversary. And resources have been made available for local commemorations. So don't wait for the Synod to organize your local commemoration. Find an Anglican buddy or two and arrange for a local celebration using the resources that have been prepared. It'd be a wonderful way of us participating in this year of commemoration.
Thank you, Bishop Susan. Any other questions or comments? If not, thank you, Dorothy. Thank you, Bishop Gregg. Moving on to the report of the Committee of Reference and Council.
Good afternoon again. I'm Glenn Harvey, a lay delegate from Hope Lutheran in Nanaimo on the traditional lands of the Snuneymuxw First Nations. We are bringing back RNC motion number 6, which we viewed, but was referred back for more work. And I'll now call on Dorothy Reed to speak to the, first of all, cite the motion and then speak to it after it's been moved and seconded.
Okay, the motion is before you on the screen. Move that the BC Synod and Convention direct the BC Synod Council to study the possibility of allocating an equivalent to 50% of the proceeds of the sale of the UBC Campus Center property as investment funds become accessible so as to benefit the Musqueam on whose territory the Lutheran Campus Center stood, and then act on what the Synod Council and Musqueam Band have negotiated. Is there a seconder to that motion? It is seconded. Thank you. It is open for discussion. Pardon me? Dorothy, please go ahead.
If I can give the rationale for that motion. Again, I'm Dorothy Reed from Peace Lutheran Church on the unceded territory of the Matsqui and Sumas people that are part of the Stolo Nation. They've been on this land for over 10,000 years. First of all, on behalf of the Peace Lutheran Church congregation and the 3 individuals who put this motion forward, I'd really like to thank the Reference and Council Committee members for ensuring that this motion is compliant with our law and policy. We truly appreciate your effort. For me, this is kind of where the rubber hits the road, and our commitment for reconciliation faces a test. The Musqueam people are only one of the Indigenous groups who have been harmed by our history of colonialism. Many Indigenous communities are struggling to regain the health of their community. Intergenerational trauma has led to social issues such as homelessness, addictions, loss of language, loss of the concept of family, loss of culture in far too many of the Indigenous communities. We as a Synod are in the position now of being able to make amends for our role in the creation of these social issues. By investing in that community rather than just investing the money to accumulate more wealth, we can take a concrete action to better the lives of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. Is there anybody speaking to that motion? John Boyd.
John Boyd, St. George's Kamloops, by virtue of the Waterloo Declaration, in Kamloops in the territory of the Secwepemc Khuluk. I speak against the motion at the present time. I agree with the truth of the motion. I speak against it for one principle and one principle only, and that's because, as we identified in the Treasurer's report, it's been 3 years and we don't have an actual discussion or plan that's been presented to the entire Synod in terms of exactly what portion of that funds we're going to give to campus ministry. And we're treading an ethical fine line in that a legacy which now leaves an entire generation of diverse persons in the church disenfranchised is being used to prop up the corporate structure of the Synod. And I think we need to finish that piece of business first before moving on to new projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Herman.
I speak against the motion also, but I speak against it for a different reason. I don't have a problem at all with us using part of our funds to improve our relationship with the Indigenous, the First Nations, and I think that's important. To say that we're going to give half of this to the Musqueam, it was purely fortuitous that we happened to be on Musqueam land, and I don't know that we as church have done anything to the Musqueam any particularly more than we have done to anyone else. If we want to use 50% of this money to improve our relationship with First Nations in British Columbia or within the area covered by our Synod, I would be fine by that. My sense is that the Musqueam Nation is probably much financially better off than the BC Synod. And I would be, I don't think they're the group that are in need of this money. BC First Nations across Canada can do that, and we need to form relationships with them, but we don't necessarily form relationships with people by giving them money. So I would like to see us use the funds we have to form relationships, but not necessarily guarantee that the Musqueam get 50% of this money.
Thank you. Mogans.
Right. Yeah. So my name is Mogens Hansen. I'm from Good Shepherd in Coquitlam. I speak against this motion because it focuses on the money. And I think that's the wrong focus. I think that what we should do first is we should find ways of building friendship with First Nations people. We saw yesterday, and some of us saw again today, the the video from Prince George, where they had reached out to the LGBTQ community, participating in Pride Parade, and the young queer woman came and they managed to actually open their hearts to her, and she was so impressed. It was a very, very moving presentation. And if that can happen with that community, with the queer community, well, surely we can do something similar with the First Nations communities and have personal relationships. And then if we need something for a First Nations project, then the BC Synod would have money that we as congregations could reach out to apply for, and we could do something meaningful. I think that's much more meaningful than beginning with the money. Let's begin with the projects rather than just a dollar amount. Thank you.
Thank you. Norman.
Yeah, I agree with some of the previous comments. When we talk of, I've worked with the First Nations I'm from Hills of Peace and Kamloops, and I've worked with many First Nations over the years, and I've heard the stories from the Musqueam and the Stolo and the Lumi and the Cowichan Indian Band. There were 27 bands that used to meet on a regular basis on these lands for gatherings, for potlatches, etc. And so people came from all districts, from Chilliwack, from Pemberton, from Washington State, from Vancouver Island, the Coast Salish. They all met on these lands. And when we talk about just the Musqueam, UBC campus is supposed to be for the whole province. We have students from across the world coming to UBC, never mind BC. Within BC, we have 200 First Nations bands, and they are represented by 4 different organizations, well, 3 plus 1. It's the Union of BC Indian Chiefs with Chief Roseanne Archibald. We have the BC Assembly of First Nations with the Regional Chief of Terry TG. We've got the First Nations Health Authority. Their chair is Pauline Erickson. And we also have the BC Métis Association with Daniel Fontaine, their CEO. These are all people that we should be building our relationships with. And it's not just the Musqueam, but it's all of the First Nations. And I think we need to have that relationship and have those discussions first before we start allocating $4 million to the Musqueam Band. Because as we heard earlier, money isn't going to build a relationship. It's us getting out there and talking to the people, talking to the chiefs, talking to these groups and forming those relationships. I think we need to do that first, and we need to go out there and talk to them. You know, the United Nations Declaration of Rights of the Indigenous People, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the Indian Residential School recommendations, the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls have recommendations. All these people have come up with recommendations. And the one thing that is throughout all of the recommendations is the relationship with the people of Canada to the First Nations. And so we need to build that relationship with them first and get out there and do that before we start allocating money as this motion puts forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia. Oh, I'm sorry, Myrna. I've got them out of sequence here. Myrna.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone that has spoken to this, and I agree with everybody. I'm speaking from Dunbar Lutheran Church on the unceded lands of the Musqueam. I'm also going to vote against this, and my primary reason, and I agree with everything that's been said ahead of me, but this is a very big decision to have landed on our table yesterday and to have had no chance to discuss it as a group. And speaking via Zoom, it's not the same as being in a room with other people. When something like this comes up, you would say, did you know about this? Did you know, or can we talk about this? It would have been nice if we could have been in breakout rooms to have had some really meaningful discussion, just as these gentlemen ahead of me have said, because everything is very valid. And personally, on behalf of my council, I would have liked to have seen this and been able to discuss it because it is a large sum of money. I believe it also leads to precedents in other areas, but that is totally separate from that. But thank you for hearing my opinion. As I say, this is my personal opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia.
A couple of, while I appreciate the spirit of this motion, I reluctantly speak against it. One question I have for information first, it said negotiations between the Synod and the Musqueam. Are there currently some negotiations already underway? Does anyone know the answer to that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Other questions that arise for me is the center was on Musqueam land, but was not the center contributed to by churches across the Synod, et cetera. So my sense is it was a collective resource, and if it gets disposed of, it should be disposed of collectively. And also, since the first intention of it was that it be dedicated towards developing campus ministry in a new way of acknowledging the new way campuses happen these days. It seems to me that it's already been designated. And so I'm also curious about I'm not sure if it's a legal or financial thing, but my understanding is that dedicated funds cannot easily be rededicated. So I don't know if anyone can answer those information questions that might help clarify this.
I don't know if we're speaking to or against the motion. I understand the questions, and I think the questions expressed by you cause people to question, and I don't have answers specifically for those questions for you here today because we're dealing with the motion as it is. But I believe the input assists.
Okay, but I thought that's can't the treasurer answer those questions about dedicated funds, et cetera?
Yeah. They are internally restricted funds, which means that the Synod as the Synod can decide what to do with the funds. And when we sold the property, we recognized.
Oh, somebody disappeared. I'm not hearing the chairperson speak. But then I'll just conclude by saying, yes, I speak against the motion, or if it's possible to make a motion to refer the whole matter to Synod Council to be discussed by the new council and brought forward at a future date. If I can make that motion to refer, I would make a motion to refer.
I knew this would happen.
There. Okay. Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, we're having some Zoom problems here in the room, so I don't know where I was cut off, but hopefully that provides some input. Our motion, we're really here to discuss the motion at this point in time. I don't have a lot of additional information for you, I'm afraid.
Then I would like to make a motion to refer the whole matter to Synod Council to be discussed in their upcoming mandate and brought back at a future date.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor that we have to deal with. You can provide a notice of motion. Nope,
Okay.
sorry. Motion to refer.
Well, no, a
to
motion
express.
to refer would
Yeah.
take that motion and put it
Okay.
somewhere. I thought that has precedence. No?
Okay.
The motion, is it ask for parliamentarian?
Okay.
Or I see there's other people who want to speak, so.
Okay, let's just, because you've come up with a motion to defer, let me get our parliamentarian and ask him for what our next steps are here. And is it debatable? Is our parliamentarian there?
Yes, he is. The motion needs to be seconded and it can be debated. And requires a majority approval.
Okay, if there's a motion to defer,
There
Sorry,
was a motion to refer.
Pardon me, motion to refer. It's been seconded.
Seeing that there's a number of other hands who wish to speak on the matter, maybe we should let them speak, and then later on, if it's still felt it should be referred. So I withdraw my motion to refer.
Just let's wait for so we have this correct.
Yeah, you can, it can be amended and debated, but it only is about whether to refer, not the main question. Is she withdrawing the motion then?
Okay. So we would have to deal with this unless you wish to withdraw this. Okay, so you prefer to withdraw and let other people speak?
I prefer to withdraw, and I'd like to hear the other discussion from the other hands.
Okay, thank you. Christoph.
Great. Thank you, Patricia. I think that's helpful because the reactions so far, I think, have shown that we really have a great need to speak about these matters, that we have been silent in the church on these matters for far too long, that we don't have a understanding that the only reason we were able to purchase land in the first place is because the land was taken away from the people who were here before us. The reason that the motion mentions the Musqueam is because the campus center was on the land of the Musqueam band. I think it would be improper for us to say, we know how the money is to be spent better if we're serious about relationships. Relationships usually are mutual, and for us to operate on a mindset that we know better where the money is to be spent really perpetuates the colonialism that we've been engaged in for a long time. And so for that reason, the motion mentions the Musqueam, and I believe it's vital for the motion to do so. In regards to the matter of finances, that we shouldn't start with money, but we should build relationships. Well, we haven't built relationships, but my internship supervisor, 28 years ago, told me when I negotiate my salary with my congregational council or my congregation, that money matters and that money is an expression of respect. And I think that's true for all of us, the way that we deal with funds. It has to do, money always expresses the values that we hold, which is the reason that the rich young ruler, for example, in Mark 10, the story that we missed because of our Thanksgiving readings, went away sad and was not able to follow Jesus. So these matters come to the heart of our relationship, I think, as disciples, and I think that's why they're important. The other piece that's important is that we're benefactors of real estate speculation in the Vancouver market. The campus center was valued, in 2010 at $2 million. We sold it for $8 million. That all has to do with speculation. So how much do we want to be part of that? And we don't even have any projects that we want to fund. We've only parked the money. I find it hard to think that we have to park money and are unwilling to engage in meaningful acts of reconciliation when we don't even have an idea of how to spend it. Regarding John's concern about campus center funds, those bring forward the motion only ask for $4 million of the 8. So if there are projects, there are $4 million left to allocate to those projects. Thank you.
Thank you. David Hunter.
Thank you. Thanks for all the thoughts expressed already. I want to test an amendment to the motion, and I want to propose that the motion read that the BC Synod and Convention direct the BC Synod Council to study the possibility of allocating an equivalent to 50% of the proceeds of the sale of the UBC Campus Center property as invested funds become accessible, so as to benefit the first, and here it changes, First Nations organizations of British Columbia, with the intent that it would be in consultation, of course, with leadership of First Nations organizations. That's the amendment I would like to propose.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't identify myself from Peace Lutheran and Vernon.
Okay, thank you.
Nation.
Let me just make sure that the secretary caught all of those changes. Great. Okay. And you would need a seconder for that amendment as well. Okay. Okay. Okay, so up on the screen is what we think we heard. And if David, does that capture your amended motion?
Yes, I think that is fair and might not need the in front of First Nations. But I think the other thing that could be incorporated is a mechanism for consultation. I agree with Christoph. It's not a matter of us deciding where this money should be going, but working with our First Nations partners.
Okay. Thank you, David. And Dorothy, is that what you thought you were seconding?
Sorry, yes, but yeah.
Thank you. So David, you wish to speak to that motion, to that amendment?
Yes, briefly, I would just like to say that I agree totally with the sentiment of this motion, that it is an opportunity for us to begin with, to make concrete gestures of reparation and making amends with our First Nations neighbors. And this is a very prime opportunity to do that kind of thing. I have concerns about how it's done and whether if it's all concentrated locally in one place. I think we need to be careful to be open to using those resources where they're needed across the province, echoing once again the sentiment that this institution of our student center has served people from all over the province. And I think that's appropriate to use it in more than one location. Thank you.
Okay, great. I have hands up right now, and I don't know if you're speaking to the amendment. That would be what we need to deal with at this point. Barbara, were you speaking to the amendment?
It was not my intention to speak to the amendment. It was my intention to speak to the motion, but I think I can make my comments applicable to the amendment. I'm Barbara Andrews. I'm an intergenerational residential school survivor. I'm a proud Cree woman. I'm full status. And as much as my heart is full of joy at your willingness to want to build relations with First Nations people across British Columbia, I am concerned that you're putting money before building the relationships. For us as Indigenous people, relationships are fundamental and the beginning of any journey we take with anyone. I think if we find a way in which we can figure out how across our synod we can learn to build relationships, that would be a better initiative for us to undertake. I would suggest making funds available to local congregations to engage in projects with First Nations people, and then make funds available as well as projects unfold, as relationships build and needs are known. I abstained from all of the motions last night that dealt with First Nations people because I was uneasy with the tone of colonization. We throw money at problems. We don't get to know people. And so I felt the need to speak today and move our focus from money to a focus of making funds available to build relationships in a healthier way. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Richard Hergesheimer, did you wish to speak to the amendment?
I do. I
Thank you.
thank Barbara for those comments because I think this whole issue has put us right smack into the issue that Susan Beaumont was dealing with today about making decisions rather than finding discernment. I don't see any way around this other than have a win-lose thing. Either something wins or something loses. I think there's a time and place, and I do this reluctantly, but I think she put her finger on it, that this is not the time or place to make the decision to give money. It's a time and place for us to step back, put this back into Synod Council, find a way to engage the people in the congregations in a discussion of this so that we can do this without feeling either like colonialists or whatever it might be. I think the amendment allows us a chance to step back and breathe. Thank you.
Thank you. Lyndon.
Thank you. Lyndon Sayers, Lutheran Church of the Cross, Victoria. Having served on the Journey Towards Reconciliation Committee with the Synod, together with Carolyn Clausen, who's Indigenous Lutheran leader in our midst, just thinking maybe it would be good to just go with the original motion, which was straightforward. The danger of waiting until tomorrow is that we just never get to it. So that's one concern there, and just a sense that this is whose land. If the Musqueam people is on whose land the building was constructed and we profited from the sale, why not just move ahead with that and use that as a building block for a relationship, rather than trying to think so many steps ahead, what that might look like, or whether we will in some sense profit from that relationship, but rather just to do the right thing, which is where I think the intent from the original motion came from. Thank you.
Thank you. Bishop Gerhard.
I would like to give notice of motion that, and the motion is to refer this to the next session of Synod of the convention, namely tomorrow morning.
Thank you. Okay. Notice of motion. Okay, so we still have the amendment before us. we do have a notice of motion. Are we prepared to deal with the amendment as it is presented to us? If there's no further question, I am going to call for a vote. I just need to get the vote up. So it is called RNC number 6, amendment to RNC number 6, and you can vote now. Yeah, that's fine. Sorry, Ken. The vote is up. Yes. We'll give you another 30 seconds to finish voting, please. And I will declare voting is closed. Okay. I haven't got anything yet. Ready? Yeah. Okay. Motion to amend, 40 yes, 35 no, 2 abstentions. The motion is amended. Bishop Gerhard provided us with a notice of motion. Bishop Gerhard.
Yes, I'd like to move that we refer voting on this motion until the next session of the convention, which would be tomorrow morning. And the reason, the rationale is that I'd like some time to reflect on this motion further, to have a chance to spend some time in prayer so that I can make an informed decision when the motion comes to the convention. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a seconder to that motion. Seconded, thank you very much. The motion is going to be before you. If we can just get it up just a second. Move that the BC Synod Convention refer reference to Council number 6 to the next business session, Sunday morning. Hergy.
Once again, I'm reluctant to say that I would vote against that motion. I don't think tomorrow morning will make this any easier for us to make the decision. What it will succeed in doing, however, is give everybody a sleepless night tonight. It'll load the tomorrow morning with a tremendous burden. And I think we need to have more time. I understand it's not about the money, whether it's going here or there or anything else. It's partly about relationships, but it is more about giving us time to step back and say, what is God trying to do here with us, rather than just saying, we'll give the money away to here or there. It's larger than that, in my opinion. So I will vote against the motion to defer it till tomorrow morning.
Thank you. Christoph.
I speak in favor of referring it to tomorrow morning. However, I won't be able to participate tomorrow morning, and there may be other clergy who also may not be able to participate.
Okay.
Lorianne.
Lorianne Boucher Crawford, Christ the King, Surrey, and I live on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and other Coast Salish peoples. I speak against the motion for the same reason that Christoph had mentioned. Not everyone is going to be able to be here in the morning for this really important motion.
Okay.
Okay, and I will point out that we are limited tonight as to how long we continue in this debate. We have contracted services for voting and for media supplies that we have extended to a certain time, but at one point I will have to close off discussions regardless because there are other things on the agenda. Just a note, and there are 4 other motions yet to come from reference in council. So, Nathan.
Nathan Fong, Grace Burnaby. I speak against that motion to defer to tomorrow. Same reason as Christoph and Lorianne, but I do have a question about the motion itself. The motion says that we direct the Synod Council to study the possibility of allocating. We're not saying that the Synod Council has to do this, that they're going to study that. And isn't that what this discussion is about right now? So I don't know if we're discussing the motion anymore, but we're discussing what we're telling the Synod Council to do.
Okay.
And so we're wasting our time talking about what we're not supposed to be talking about. That's what I think. I could be wrong. I could be reading it wrong. There are a lot of other people who are much better at words than I am. I'm trying to be concise so I don't run out of time. But that's how I read the motion. And I think we're talking about the wrong thing.
Joan.
Joan Beek, Our Saviour's Prince George, on the territories, unceded territories of the Kootenay. I think the motion that was posted should also, as amended, is that I didn't see the words as amended by the previous motion in there. So I don't know if that's been put in there. Okay. And I think Nathan's right in that it's the motion talks about to study the possibility. And I haven't formed an opinion either way on any of these motions.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. I have had a person post question. I am aware of the time. I don't want to cut off conversation on this, but at the same time, we are going to be up against the wall here very shortly, and we will be deferring everything to Synod Council and requiring a motion to do that with this and all other motions that we have to consider if we aren't prepared to meet on Sunday morning. That was the agenda of convention, and as delegates, we expect that people will be here for convention. So I'll take two more hands, and then I'm going to call the question, and I refer to Gerhard.
When you're allowing me to speak according to parliamentary procedure, I think I close the debate on my motion.
Okay.
And in light of what my colleagues have said, who will not be able to be here tomorrow morning, I will probably vote against my own motion.
Okay. Okay. So Bishop Gerhard has spoken. He is the last to speak because of the parliamentary process. Do we have a question, a motion ready to up? So I'm going to call for the question. That's just a. So motion to defer, please vote now. And I'm going to give you another 15 seconds, and then we will close the voting. And voting is closed. Could you please display the results? Okay. Motion to defer, no 61, yes 16. The motion to defer is defeated. We are back to the motion that was amended earlier. If I can get that back up on the screen. Okay, there's a couple. Second. Okay, there is the motion as amended, and those wishing to speak to the motion, Jackie?
I thank you for considering this motion. I also want to point out, as Nathan pointed out, the word study is in there intentionally, as is the fact that there is no specific timeline attached. Yesterday, there were a number of motions voted on and approved about building community, about building connections and being in dialogue. The intent of this is that it would also go together with those on an obvious, for me, level. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking to the amended motion that was before you there? If not, I'm going to call the question. And I've lost my voting software. RNC number 6 as amended is now available. Would you please vote now? Okay. And what I'm going to ask for voting to close. Okay, would you please display the results? Amended motion, yes 43, no 33, 2 abstentions. The motion is carried. Looking at the time at this point, I'm going to ask for a motion to refer the remaining reference and council motions to Synod Council.
I so move.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Seconded, thank you. Discussion. John Boyd.
I speak against the motion for the pure reason that we've talked about electoral reform, which these remaining motions deal with. And if we simply refer and refer and refer, as Nathan Fong pointed out with the last motion, we don't get anything done.
Thank you. Kristen Steele.
I also speak against the motion. We have scheduled business session tomorrow morning. I believe that we need to honor the other motions that have also been presented.
Herman.
Well, just a question. Do we have a business session tomorrow? Is there some reason why we cannot deal with them tomorrow?
That's a good question, Herman. We tried to move stuff to a session tomorrow, and we had a number of delegates say that they would not be available tomorrow. We can defeat this motion to refer, and we will have a session tomorrow morning. If there is a quorum, we will continue. Thank you. Brenda.
Brenda, Trinity Port Alberni. I speak against this motion. We are gathered here in convention to deliberate and to discuss, and we have a session that is already booked for tomorrow morning. It is the expectation that we should be there. Let's work towards a quorum for tomorrow and do our work.
Thank you. Vida.
I speak against the motion to defer for similar reasons that Kristen Steele has voiced. These are important motions that need to be for the convention to have the opportunity to deliberate.
Okay. Seeing nobody else's hands raised, I am going to call the question.
How's this doggy? How's my doggy? Are you a good dog? Oh, you are a good girl.
Herman, you're unmuted.
And you may vote now. Motion to refer. Please vote.
No, I can't. Nothing showed up.
There's a raised hand. Patricia.
Nothing's shown up, or is everybody else waiting as well?
No, it's there. Just to hit next vote, it should refresh.
Got it.
Thank you. And I'll give you 30 more seconds. Been here so long, the battery in my watch has given up now, too.
Be grateful for that.
Does Bishop Greg have a battery for that too?
No, he doesn't. If he does, I'd be very impressed.
Way better than the battery on your pacemaker.
Okay, and I declare voting closed.
As a wise minister said one time, better that parishioners are looking at the watch than checking to see if it's still running.
Looks like Herman's being eaten by his dog.
Okay. Thank you. And would you please display the results? So the motion to, oh, sorry. Okay. Oh, almost. Okay. Motion to refer to unfinished business to Synod Council, 53 no, 22 yes, 1 abstained. The motion is defeated. We will meet tomorrow morning. Just have to find the right time. 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. And I thank the Assembly because you've, in this afternoon, have thrown about every possible Borno's rules at me. And I've survived. Thank you to Reference and Council. We will continue your work tomorrow morning. Okay. Okay, and we will now have closing devotions. I can. And you're muted, Patricia.
Of my life, story of my life. How's the volume? I can put the headset on, but how is the volume?
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay. I had actually planned a devotion of wrapping it all up, but obviously the Holy Spirit's had another idea, so we'll have a slight amendment. This will be brief. I'm here with my long-suffering pastor spouse, Walter, the living miracle, as some of you know, also known as Grace Personified. So, Patricia Genelia, Christ of Kelowna on the Silks and Interior Salish territory. You won't be hearing that much more. And the reason I asked Susan Beaumont the question is because I would like to begin with a breathing exercise. I will not, as again, I will be guiding us through it. And then we have a couple of prayers. And then there is the New Zealand Lord's Prayer, which comes to us with permission. And as it will be shown on the screen for you to be able to read, to pray it in front of you. And you'll see by the words probably why I chose it. And then we will close with a classic hymn, The Day You Gave Us, Lord Has Ended, which is brought to us in recording from Gladys Clontag, who is 85 years old, has been playing the organ since she was 12, and is a pianist extraordinaire to this day. So let us begin. We come before you this day, God, in this liminal space of a convention. And this convention is liminal in that we are at home and not at home. We take time to breathe. We breathe in the fullness of what these days have been. The questions, the debate, the anticipation, the joy, the disappointments. We pray that we created space for your Spirit to do what needed to be done. We have journeyed with Bishop Gregory as he now takes a bend in the road, and we welcome Bishop-elect Kathy to be our new shepherd. For all of this and what we might be carrying in our hearts this day, we give you thanks. We pray, O Divine One, support us all the day long of this troubled life until the shadows lengthen and the evening comes and the busy world is hushed. The fever of life is over and our work is done. We now continue by praying together the New Zealand Anglican Lord's Prayer. Eternal Spirit, Earth Maker, Pain Bearer, Life Giver, source of all that is and that shall be, Father and Mother of us all, loving God in whom is heaven, the hallowing of your name echo through the universe, the way of your justice be followed by the peoples of the world. Your heavenly will be done by all created beings. Your commonwealth of peace and freedom sustain our hope and come on earth. With the bread we need for today, feed us. In the hurts we absorb from one another, forgive us. In times of temptation and test, strengthen us. From trials too great to endure, spare us. From the grip of all that is evil, free us. For you reign in the glory of the power that is love, now and forever. Amen. A reading from Corinthians. It is God who said, "Let light shine out of the darkness," who has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. But we have this treasure in clay jars, so that it may be made clear that this extraordinary power belongs to God and does not come from us. The King James was much more poetic. We were earthen vessels back then, evoking images of beautiful hand-wrought pottery. The NRSV renders us as clay jars, reminding me of a squat brown garlic jar I used to have, or the flower pots I sometimes use. But in that wonderful texture of life, are we not both? We are beautiful hand-wrought pottery in the hands and eyes of our Creator. And sometimes we're simply clay jars, plodding along, needing to get the job done. And so we pray.
Gracious God, we give you thanks for the day, especially for the good we are permitted to give us and to receive. The day is now past, and we commend it to you. We entrust to you that night. We reset security for your and our help, and you either slumber or sleep. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Keep watch, dear Lord, with those who work or watch or weep this night, and give your angels charge over those who sleep. Tend the sick, give rest to the weary, bless the dying, soothe the suffering, comfort the afflicted, shield the joyous, and for all your love's sake. Amen. Eternal God, the hours both of day and night are yours, and to you the darkness is no threat. Be present, we pray, with those who labor in these hours of night, especially those who watch and work on behalf of others. Grant them diligence in their watching, faithfulness in their service, courage in danger, and competence in emergencies. Help them to meet the needs of others with confidence and compassion. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. These prayers come from Compline, the prayer at the end of the day. And for the night owls among us, and I am one, there is nothing more beautiful than the deep stillness of a house at 2 a.m. But even that liminality comes to an end when the dawn comes, the baby is born, the apples need to be picked. And so we need to enter into whatever lies ahead. And so our final prayer is dedicated to our Bishop Gregory. As we know, this is one of his favorites. It speaks to us in our liminality. I think it helps lead us forward. And then we conclude with our hymn and pray that the Lord grant us a safe lodging, a holy rest, and peace at the last, to our homes, to our circles, to our communities, to our world. O God, you have called your servants to ventures of which we cannot see the ending, by paths as yet untrodden, through perils unknown. Give us faith to go out with good courage, not knowing where we go, but only that your hand is leading us and your love supporting us, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. We now sing "The Day You Gave Us, Lord, Is Ended," verses 1 to 3. Peace be with you.
Our day's work is done. Peace be with you.
And also with you.
And also with you. And thank you very much for your leadership.
Peace be with you.
All right, show it again.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Good
night,
night.
everybody.
Peace
Sleep
be
well.
with you all.
Good night, everybody.
See you in the morning.
Good night.
you all. Good
Peace be with you.
And Dorothy, good night to you.
Good night and peace be with you.
Good morning. Before you go, just look at the, I don't know how to do that, but anyway, it's fine. Okay.